I don't profess to be a fantastic esoteric expert, but I've seen variations of this where you have the cobra, which I always thought related to the reptilian brain, and something I was saying about earlier, which relates to the solar consciousness that has been tapped into and probably relates to right brain activity. But this is the wing, isn't this the wings of Isis or the wings of Horus? And it seems to animate some idea of higher levels of consciousness, but at the same time some sort of understanding of the fact that the reptile and the solar symbol goes together, doesn't it, throughout history? The shell logo is the same, isn't it? Isn't the shell logo more of a rising sun than a fossil?
No originality, right? I mean, why is it always the wings and the sun disk, the sun, the pyramid?
Well,
always.
I think with all of the symbols, they're part of the matrix programming, aren't they? They're part of the codes which speak subconsciously, and they're also leaving their mark in this reality at the same time. So you won't get the individualism in that sense, because very much of what we call reality has been infested by symbolism. So that's why there's a common ground across everything, which goes way back into the ancient world. The use of the lion, for example, on the MGM, the Lion of Judea. The constant use of wings and solar wings relates back to the Egyptian brotherhoods and the Freemasonic structures. So the whole of society, almost at the highest pinnacle, is coming from those areas. I mean, cars were invented by Freemasons, weren't they?
Yeah, and the Mercedes gang, the Daimler Mercedes, were into weapons and all of that kind of thing beforehand, you know. And if you study the Mercedes logo, that's actually a subliminal squaring of the circle. If you take what looks like a trident, right, part of the Mercedes logo, it's actually the corner of a cube inside a circle. And that's why a lot of logos, like the Volkswagen logo and others, have a circle around it, because and Lexus is actually the angle of a pyramid or a triangle, but they just put the circle around it because something about the mind is like scoping in on that one area, which then obscures what they don't want you to see, but your full mind, your full conscious mind, sees the cube in the circle and all the symbolism that it implies. And in fact, if you go to the earliest Mercedes logo, it was actually a triskelion. It was 3 interlocking circles. And then they morphed that into the famous logo that they have now. And even the dimensions of those 3 lines, you know, how many degrees there are. There's a connection to, you know, sacred numbers and things like that. So geometry is involved, sacred geometry, color, talismanic symbolism.
Do you think these companies are hiring people and telling them exactly what symbols to use, or is the artist just running with it on their own?
They have their own artists. They have the whole of Hollywood is full of artists.
Right.
And a lot of them are from the inside. They're not from the outside. They're not outsider artists. No. These people are in the know. They are the shamans and the Da Vinci's of today. So this is no surprise that they're using this language and this symbolism, because it's the symbolism that's been used for thousands of years.
It's not just a symbol, it's an actual invocation of the serpent power. So you can feel that power coming up the spine and coming up here.
To me, it's also that energy, or everything is potential, isn't it? It's neither good nor bad until we choose how to use it or how it's going to influence us.
Logos are neither good nor bad. It's what they do with them. It's what we do with them. That's what makes the difference.
The very word logo, logos, right, has many ancient permutations leading back to logos. The primordial logos is picked up as lugal or lu in the Welsh, you know, and then you have the Sumerian version. But the word in Latin had many permutations. A lawyer was known as logos. The word to speak, in fact, that's what in the Bible they say the logos is the word, right? So logo means word, symbol, because we know that behind the word of God was always the symbol of God. You have to have an idea of something before you can manifest it. The thing that people find difficult is how come then, even with the use of this esoterica, it will actually sell a tube of toothpaste or a bar of soap, right? Even if you put billions behind it and you put it on big massive billboards and marquees, people can't connect that. It wouldn't sell you a damn thing if this oligarchical Black Lodge had not raped you first of the very things that you're missing, so that you feel that through the simulacra or surrogate form, i.e. a girl draped across a Ferrari, a beautiful sunsets and beaches, and all the elusive, alluring mystique that they've created, your hand wouldn't move towards it if you weren't already spiritually and emotionally raped. You're attracted to it through these ancient symbols, which are part of the race memory, as I am saying. You have this in churches, with the doorways being shaped like the vagina for the sexual tantric higher union. You have the baptism waters being slightly salted to represent the uterine waters. You have the chalice and the bread representing, again, other very powerful archetypal ideas of androgyny and chemical wedding. And you have these guys dressed around in women's clothes. As Leo said, murdering, suppressing, butchering, torturing, whipping the real thing and keeping them under suppression, but then donning the symbols of their power and saying, I'm it, with their vagina head dresses and bloody flowing robes. And that's what this whole corporate thing is. It's a form of plagiarization, exploitation, confiscation, and ultimately colonization of the mind. The X represents the female, the X chromosome, right? Y is the male, and X is female. So in many female products, especially cosmetics, you'll see the X. X is also sacred. X is in sex. But the X is also very important. You'll have a lot of cars with just an X, or LX, or XL. These are phonemes. That feminizes a product. When you put X on it, it feminizes it. Other symbols will masculinize it. So men will be attracted to something with the X on it, or the O, right? The big O, because that's the ovum.
The Renault Clio. The car, the feminine, it's aimed for women, clitoris. The Lexus, leisure, sex, success. Ever since then, it has actually made me think, when I look at logos, of what I'm being drawn into.
They then reverse it, and the moment that you reverse anything, it now appeals to your subconscious mind more than it does when it's conscious. So there's a whole cult of tweaking a thing so that it loses its conscious appeal. This is part of an occult thing designed by the Occult Brotherhood. It's not just Madison Avenue in Hollywood doing it because they want to sell bars of soap and Ferraris. It's deeper than that, The knowledge gives you the ability to spot on sight, right, what looks like it's deadly, and avoid it, and do more than that, which is either use the symbols yourself to empower yourself in your companies, right? Because this knowledge was taken from the good people in the first place anyway. The evil may be using it, but they've stolen it from those who once used this as sacred. So it's our honor, we're honor bound to take it back and use it to empower ourselves. There's nothing evil about a G, there's nothing evil about a cross, there's nothing evil about 666.
We don't live without buying stuff. But if we take back our consciousness, we can select what we buy and where from.
Corporatism today, they think it's all a new thing. There's been nothing but corporatism from the time of Egypt onwards. It's a giant brotherhood.
Symbols are the language of the subconscious mind, and it's the subconscious mind of global Babylon. It's their language. They've owned that language. They've milked the minds of the shamans, taken their language, and they've adopted it and used it and done other things with it. So they're speaking great truths through the symbols, but not necessarily helping you to empower your truth through the symbolism. You have to find your own connection to the subconscious to do that. It's almost becoming a way of reading codes. None of it is secret anymore.
We're talking about mass hypnosis. Coming out of a mass hypnosis is about self-esteem. Our defense against this is our self-esteem. When we truly value ourselves, these don't have any power.
They're using something intensely sacred as a means to communicate their filth. Because the moment that you desecrate anything holy, that's a crime for which you will end up having to pay. Right? And I believe that the time of awakening is part of the payback.
Just something about Egypt. It's dawned on me that we're still in Egypt. We haven't left Egypt. Well, some of us have. There is an exodus that will take place, but everything about the world that we live in, its symbolism, the logos, the structures, the hierarchy, the trinkets, the governance, the pharaohs, the kings, the queen, we're still in Egypt.
I always describe it as the difference between magic and sorcery. The magic is when you're dealing with almost exactly the same type of activity, meaning communicating to somebody behind their conscious volition. But you're doing it for the ultimate uplift of their soul. Then you have the sorcery where you're doing exactly the same thing. In other words, the technique is identical. It's like having a golden sword. You can either cut onions with it or you can use it for what it's for. So the dark side, they use it for the bringing down of mankind.
We live in a hall of mirrors with some very clever and rather dark people pulling strings, but that's just how it is. The question only to me is then, what do we do with it? They will reap their own rewards in time. It's not my business to see anybody else reaps their reward. That's the collective, the spirit's business. You know, how do I work within and live happily and joyfully within a society that's completely crazy, that's doing bonkers things, and and not get caught in it?
For me, I think the key with this is that, as this lady said, that the collective, the idea that the memory goes back before our birth and we inherit a collective memory. We inherit these symbols psychologically, emotionally, and these people are, as a number of people have said around the table, sequestering that information. So they could invent new shapes, new symbols, new whatever, but instead they use things that are embedded already within us. So the resonance that is created with recognition of that symbol is the draw, basically. So we don't necessarily be interested in Whirlpool or GE, but the spiral is embedded within us. So I think that each shape holds resonance. If you create a triangle, if you create a circle, you can hold a resonance in it. So it's like a machine. You know, a shape is a machine. So I think the inoculation against this is to be conscious of the mechanism, is to understand how it works. So once you understand that a shape can hold a resonance, then that resonance's effect is lessened, is diminished. Maybe not completely eradicated, but diminished. So the way to understand this is to A, bring it into your consciousness, and B, is to go to a place where there are no symbols, into the wilderness, where there's no text, no right angles, no geometry in the artificial sense, and the only geometry that's there is organic, is curved, is, you know, completely from the central pure sapphire emanation, as I would put it. Shapes in themselves are no problem, but if you don't understand what they mean, you are subject to something that is somebody else's paradigm, somebody else's construct. So consciousness is the first thing to break through, and then to give oneself a holiday from that, to take a break from it, to go to somewhere where there isn't any. Move in a space where there is nothing, you know, there is nothing, there's just nature. It's incredibly instructive as to what power these symbols have, because the kind of natural charge of the body increases, and that drain, even to see them, even if you don't actually perceive them as such, even to bring it into your field of perception, has a draining effect on the body. If you live in a city, if you're not conscious of that, you're always operating on empty, and so when you're on empty, as if you were in a fearful state, you're highly suggestible.
Your consciousness is vast, it's infinite, it sees way beyond all of this. It sees everything that exists. You're here and everywhere simultaneously. So why would this have any hold over you if you saw from a vantage point like that?
Because that's our challenge, is to awaken that other consciousness. And when that other consciousness is asleep, this can own us. And then we become an ordinary person.
What we're forgetting here is that for each of us, consciousness incarnates, and an astrologer, from the moment you're born, can map the kind of deal that you've been played. So when you step back, zoom out, and you realise everyone's doing that, then there is a kind of collective game, that there's an evolving humanity. Now, this is an old story that we're still playing.
There's a thing called identification with the object of your hate, or identification with the master. By digesting their pus and their filth and their toxicity, you become addicted to that. We ingest it, and because we don't have the pure thing, we then become dependent. We gain a taste, a palate for slop.